Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be tackling real estate investing in these uncertain times.
Uncertain is putting it mildly.
Right. And you guys sent in some really interesting stuff to get us started, like an awesome story about one of those early Amazon investments, plus a podcast episode with some economic experts, and a video all about the classic financial mistakes homeowners make.
Well, let's jump right in.
Okay, so that Amazon story, right? Apparently, Jeff Bezos' siblings invested $10,000 each back in 1995.
Wow. Talk about an early adopter.
Right, like back when Amazon was just an online bookstore. But fast forward to today, and that $10,000 could be worth an estimated $1.5 billion.
See, now that's the kind of return on investment we all dream about.
Totally. I mean, it really makes you think about the power of taking a risk.
Absolutely. But of course, risk needs to be balanced with, well, reality. And that's where understanding the bigger economic picture comes in. Like what those experts were talking about in that podcast you mentioned, inflation, recession worries, and what it all means for the housing market.
They seemed really worried about mortgage rates. I mean, they're over 7% now.
Yeah. Investors are definitely a little spooked about, well, everything, like how the new administration's policies might shake things up.
And in the podcast, didn't they mention a few specific policies that could really fuel inflation?
Yeah, they did, like new tariffs. And then there's the whole issue of, deportations and how that could affect the available pool of low-wage workers. Plus, they talked about the possibility of the government getting more involved with controlling the Fed.
Okay, so all of that could increase costs for businesses. And of course, those costs are going to get passed along to, well, all of us, right?
Yep. Higher prices for everyone. And on top of all that, we're also dealing with housing affordability being, well, pretty low. And then on top of that, not a lot of houses are being bought and sold right now.
So fewer people are buying and selling houses. What does that actually mean for the market?
Well, it makes it hard to figure out what a house is actually worth.
Huh. How so?
It's like, imagine you're trying to sell a rare comic book or something. If nobody's been buying or selling that comic book lately, it's really hard to know what someone's actually willing to pay for it, right?
Yeah, okay, I see what you mean. So is that what they mean by price discovery?
Exactly. And when you don't have much price discovery, well, it throws a big wrench in the whole system. It's like trying to hit a moving target in the dark.
So what does this all mean for, the average person who wants to buy a house or sell one?
Well, it makes things a bit tricky. Some people think a recession could actually help with affordability, but it's not that simple.
Because a recession usually means job losses and, just overall uncertainty. Doesn't sound like the best time to buy a house.
Exactly. And one of the things those experts said to keep an eye on is the mortgage delinquency rate. When people start falling behind on those payments, that's when things could be headed south.
It's like a warning sign that the market might be about to take a dip.
Right. Now, that expert had some pretty strong opinions about the state of the economy as a whole, too. Like, he even said that the current economic cycle is, and I quote, broken.
Broken. What does that even mean?
Well, basically, he's saying we haven't had a normal economic cycle since the Great Recession. Usually there's a pattern, right? Like the economy grows, then it shrinks, then it grows again. It helps to clean things up and reset the system. But since the Great Recession, there's been so much government intervention, like all that stimulus spending, and all that leads to more debt.
So we've just been, delaying the inevitable,
Yeah.
kicking the can down the road.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's not just a U.S. problem either. China and Europe, their economies are slowing down too. So even if our policies here are perfect, which they're not, we're still connected to the global economy, and all those problems can spill over.
Right. And then there's the whole issue of, debt.
Oh, yeah. We're
Okay.
adding to our national debt all the time, and now interest rates are going up. So those payments on all that debt are getting bigger and bigger. Not a good situation.
It's like we're heading for a financial cliff.
Well, let's not get too pessimistic. Maybe we should switch gears for a bit. What about that video on homeowner mistakes?
Ooh, yeah. Maybe learning from other people's mishaps can help us avoid some financial disasters.
Exactly. The video really highlighted 5 major pitfalls.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are they?
The first one, constantly refinancing. You might think you're getting a good deal, but if interest rates go up, you could actually end up paying more each month. It's basically giving yourself a rent hike over and over again.
Ouch. Not good. What's next on the list?
Treating home equity like it's a free-for-all, using it for all kinds of spending. But if home values drop, you could end up owing more on your mortgage than your house is even worth.
So no more using my home as a giant ATM. Got it.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, a lot of people think their mortgage payments are building wealth. But early on, most of that money is actually just going towards interest, not the principal.
So it's kind of like paying rent to the bank, except you eventually get to keep the place.
Right. And then there's the cheap homeowner, the one who always tries to cut corners, skimping on insurance or hiring, shady contractors.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to spend money to save money, right?
Okay, so that's 4. What's the last mistake?
Buying a house that's just too big. Bigger house means higher costs for everything. Maintenance, utilities, property taxes.
So maybe downsizing isn't such a bad idea after all.
Right. It's all about finding a place that fits your needs and, well, your budget. The video really emphasized making sure your home is a place you enjoy, not a source of financial stress.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So we've covered the don'ts, but what about the do's? What are some of those smart strategies for home ownership and investing?
Well, it all starts with getting a good mortgage rate. And then when you can, try to pay extra towards the principal.
So you can build equity faster and pay off the loans sooner.
Exactly. And while refinancing can be a good idea sometimes, to lower your interest rate, you got to be careful not to use it to just spend more money.
So refinance strategically, not impulsively. Makes sense.
Mm.
But isn't a house considered an investment? Like, why should we think of it as a liability?
That's one of those big misconceptions. Sure, real estate can go up in value, but if you're living in the house, it's more of a place to live, right? Not necessarily a guaranteed way to make money. The video actually encouraged people to think about building wealth through other types of investments like stocks or maybe even rental properties.
So don't put all your eggs in the house basket. Diversify your investments. What about budgeting? Any tips for that?
They mentioned the 7-5-1-5-10 plan.
Okay, break that down for me.
So you spend 75% of your income, put 15% towards investments, and save 10%.
Huh. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so last question about that podcast. What did that expert think about real estate as an investment? Considering how uncertain things are right now.
Well, he thinks real estate will probably keep going up in value over the long term. But in the short term, no guarantees. He's all about being conservative, making sure your investments generate positive cash flow, and being able to hold on to a property for a while. Like, don't expect to flip it for a quick profit.
So patience is key. No get-rich-quick schemes in real estate.
Pretty much.
Right.
But he did mention one interesting thing about real estate. It's a good hedge against inflation.
So even if everything else gets more expensive, real estate kind of holds its value.
Yeah, that's the idea. No guarantees, of course. But
Right.
historically, that's what's happened.
Interesting. Well, we've definitely covered a lot of ground today. That Amazon story, the economic outlook, those homeowner pitfalls.
It's a lot to take in. But hey, knowledge is power, right?
Exactly. And you know what? Thinking about all this uncertainty, it really makes you wonder.
Wonder what? Don't leave us hanging.
Well, it makes me wonder about the whole idea of control, Like how much control do we actually have over our financial futures?
Ooh, that's a deep one. And a perfect place to pick up next time. It's a question, that a lot of us are thinking about, especially now. I mean, we can make all the plans we want, set goals, invest carefully, but there's always, stuff that's totally out of our control. Inflation, interest rates, the government, what's happening in other countries. It can all just mess things up.
It's like you're sailing along, everything's going great, and then bam, a huge storm hits.
Perfect analogy. But even if you can't control the weather, you don't just give up on sailing, right?
Right. It's all about, finding that balance, taking some risks, but being prepared for the unexpected. And most importantly, remembering that this is a long game.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to be prepared, to weather those storms, keep learning. The more you understand about how things work, the better you'll be able to deal with the ups and downs.
Knowledge is power, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to investing.
Absolutely. But it's not just about knowing stuff. It's about using that knowledge, Think critically, question everything, and then make decisions based on your own situation and your own goals.
It's like that Amazon story we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jeff Bezos' siblings, they didn't just get lucky. They saw something that other people missed.
Exactly. Sometimes you got to trust your gut, Do your research, but also be willing to think differently. Of course, not every investment's going to be the next Amazon, but if you're too afraid to try something new, you might miss out on something huge.
You missed 100% of the shots you don't take. That's Wayne Gretzky, right?
He knew a thing or two about taking shots. But yeah, in investing, just like in hockey, it's not just about taking any shot. It's got to be a smart shot.
And that's where, making informed decisions comes in. Understanding the basics, assessing the risks, and then, well, choosing what makes sense for you.
You know what? I keep thinking about that part in the video, about treating your home like a liability, not an investment. It just seems so counterintuitive. Like, isn't buying a house supposed to be the biggest investment most people make?
I get that. It's definitely a different way of thinking about it. But it makes sense. I mean, sure, a house can go up in value over time, but if you're living in it, it's mainly just a place to live, not necessarily a way to get rich.
It's about setting realistic expectations, right? Making sure our spending matches our goals. If we're always pouring money into our house, upgrades, repairs, trying to keep up with the neighbors, well, that's money we could be using for other things, investments that could actually make more money.
Right. It's all about finding a balance, enjoying your home, but also making smart financial choices. That's where that 7-5-1-5-10 plan is helpful. Spend 75%, invest 15%, save 10%, makes things pretty clear. Yeah, it's like having a roadmap for your money. You know where you're going and how to get there.
Exactly. But even with a roadmap, you got to be flexible. Things change, especially with the economy being so unpredictable. You got to be ready to adjust your route if you need to.
It's like sailing through uncharted waters,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Always watching out for what's ahead, ready to change direction when the wind shifts.
I like that. That's pretty much what it's like in the financial markets. Things are changing all the time. And the people who succeed are the ones who can adapt.
Talking about adaptability, it reminds me of something I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's on your mind?
It's that whole tension between, planning for the future and enjoying the present. On the one hand, we got to be responsible, save for retirement, invest wisely, but we don't want to be so focused on the future that we forget to, well, live our lives now.
Wow, that's deep. And it's something we all struggle with, right? It's that age-old dilemma, delayed gratification versus instant gratification. Do you save for tomorrow or enjoy today? It's tough.
It really is. And I don't think there's one right answer. It's about figuring out what works for you. Your values, your goals, your situation. Everyone's different.
Absolutely. And it's definitely something to talk about with the people you care about, family, partners, whoever. Talking about money, your dreams, your worries, it can really help, makes you feel more supported, helps you make better decisions.
Yeah. It's not a solo mission. Sharing those thoughts and feelings about money, it just makes things easier.
It's like building a team, right? You're all working together to make sure everyone's financially secure, not just yourself.
We've covered so much today. Risk, adaptability, planning for the future, but also living in the moment.
It's amazing how it all ties together, like those early Amazon investors, the economic experts, even the homeowner mistakes. It's all connected.
And through it all, we keep coming back to this idea of control. Or maybe the lack of control. I mean, we can't predict the future, but we can learn, make plans, and, well, be ready for whatever comes our way.
That's the key takeaway here. You don't need all the answers. It's about learning, asking questions, and then, making choices that feel right for you. Choices that match your goals and your values.
Well said. Now, as we head into the last part of this deep dive, I'm thinking about how this all applies to our listeners. Like, what are some actual steps they can take to be smarter investors?
Ooh, that's the big question. And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about next.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap things up. We've talked about a lot, those amazing early Amazon investments, the state of the economy, and all those homeowner pitfalls.
Phew! It's been a whirlwind tour of the financial world. But now, let's bring it all home. How can you, dear listener, take all this information and actually do something with it? How do you become a better, smarter investor?
That is the question, isn't it? And I think one of the biggest takeaways from our deep dive here is that learning never stops. The financial world, it's always changing, so you got to stay curious, stay informed, and, be ready to adapt.
Couldn't agree more. It's not about knowing everything right now. It's about that mindset, lifelong learning. Read those books, listen to podcasts like ours, check out some webinars, maybe even talk to a financial advisor. There are so many ways to keep learning and stay ahead of the game.
And, don't forget about connecting with other investors, too. Share your insights, your experiences, even your worries. It can make a huge difference because, honestly, we're all in this together.
Exactly. Building a community, it just makes the whole journey less scary. It's like having a whole team cheering you on, helping you reach your goals.
Thinking about taking action, it takes me back to that Amazon story. Those siblings, they didn't just get lucky. They saw an opportunity, took a risk, and truly believed in something that most people didn't even understand yet.
That's so true. It reminds us that being informed is crucial, but sometimes you also need a little bit of, well, gut instinct. Not every investment will be a winner, but if you're too afraid to take a chance, you might miss out on something big.
It's like finding that balance between logic and intuition. But speaking of balance, what about that other tension we talked about? Planning for the future, but also enjoying the present. How do we apply that to our finances?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And honestly, I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all answer. It's all about finding what works for you. Yeah, we need to save for retirement, invest wisely, think long-term, but we also got to live our lives now. Find that joy.
That's like that old saying, right? Don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. But of course, with investing, you have to be smart about it.
Exactly. Don't blow your whole paycheck on a fancy vacation if you haven't started saving for retirement. But also, don't be so afraid to spend a little that you miss out on making memories.
It's a balancing act, for sure. And, as we wrap up this deep dive, I think there's one big theme that ties everything together. It's about taking control, taking ownership of your financial life.
Yes, absolutely. It's about educating yourself, making those decisions, and creating a future that's, well, that's truly yours.
It's about being proactive, not just reacting to whatever's happening in the market. We can't control everything, but we can control our choices.
So, to all our listeners out there, be curious, be informed, be bold, but most of all, be empowered. Take charge of your financial journey, and remember, you're not alone in this.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of real estate investing. Hope you found it useful, inspiring, and maybe even a little bit thought-provoking.
Until next time, happy investing.